this up. They're going to be answering as we go, and then we'll have Q&A time at the end too. So we try not to miss anybody, but take it away.
All right. Oh my God, that was so inspiring. So I'm going to ask people to participate through the chat as we go along, just so we keep everyone engaged and so we can learn some things about you guys more than you just shared, but thank you so much. How this is, the structure is, I'm going to talk a little bit about the basics and then talk through a couple of my partnerships and just like my background in partnerships. And then we're going to have kind of a conversation with Allegra and Valerie, who are both currently in real estate partnerships and multiples. So the basics that we're going to touch more on these as we have the conversation, but obviously your first step is to find a good partner. I think this is such an incredible way to meet people who are interested in real estate. Christina and I just actually had a big conversation about how when we met each other, we didn't know anyone who was interested in real estate, because not the general public isn't just ready to jump into a real estate partnership. So it's really exciting to get women who are all interested in this, who are already doing this, who have experience. Very exciting. And you all touched on these aspects of partnership, but we've got time, money, and talent. And the biggest thing I want to emphasize in a partnership is it can look like it can be completely different from what you have in your head. We think of a partnership as 50-50. It can be different splits. Someone could bring all the capital and someone could bring all the time. It's such a mixture, and it's going to be very specific to your situation. So, and that kind of, it's not what everyone wants to hear. They want kind of like a step-by-step, but basically we want to empower you to advocate for your skills, and find people who have complementary skills, and money and time. So once you find your partner, things to consider are your partnership exits. Super important to find your breakdown that everyone feels comfortable with, and not only comfortable, but excited for the deal. You don't want one person to feel slighted. And if you don't feel comfortable negotiating, like that could be a different, and we could go into that in this. I feel like both Valerie and Allegra are probably very good at negotiating. Negotiating is also my job. So I love that conversation, but not everyone does. So fill the chat with your questions about these things, whatever you're not comfortable. I know there's a bunch of people that said they were nervous about partnerships. They can get tense, but ownership breakdown is usually a point of tension, but getting past that is exciting. And then legal, talking through your LLCs and having someone be in charge of setting that up is really important. Roles are really important. And then your operating agreement for your LLC, and then for each property. So you could have an LLC for each property, or you could have an LLC that has multiple properties. And we'll talk through that a little bit too, of how I've done that, how Allegra has structured that. And then as far as financial, like we said, it doesn't have to be a perfect down payment split. It doesn't have to be one person brings 50% of the capital and the other person brings 50. Sometimes someone has capital and they don't have the time, like some of you said. And then loans can get a little bit tricky. Whose name does it go into? How do you make sure that if something happens, it goes to actually everybody who's in the partnership? That's going to be a big part of this also. Structuring the loans, and then structuring how the deed is written. And then as far as, we'll go into that a little bit more. I'm going to talk about my partnerships a little bit, and then we'll switch to Allegra. Okay, so most of you know me. I don't know how much I've done a couple of presentations about a couple of my properties, but just a really brief rundown. I have ownership in 9 properties, and 8 of those properties I've done with partners. So all of my properties except for 1 are with partners. It's been a way that I've moved really fast in real estate. I started investing in real estate in 2013, but didn't buy my second property till 2016. And then from 2016 until now, have acquired, 7 more properties. So it's just a really awesome way to move faster. 50% of a deal is better than 0% of a deal 10% of a deal is better than 0% of a deal. So I love how partnerships allow me to actually invest in real estate. Without partnerships, I would have one property. So I know it's really nerve-wracking to have a financial partnership with someone, and like Celeste said, it's like a marriage, but it comes with so many perks if you do it correctly. And then the way that I've structured it, 2 of the properties I have control of what happens, and the other partners, one of them is just me, so I don't have other partners, but the one that I have control of that I do have partners on, those partners are silent. So you can always structure it like that. Like if you want control of something and you know you're going to be spending the time, you can get a silent partner that doesn't have any say in what happens to the property, but they do have they have financial investment in the property. So we'll talk about how that is structured. I love that property, and I love that I always come back to, I've done all the work for it. I did a complete renovation, did all the work, sourced everything. And I come back to the fact that if I didn't have those partners, it wouldn't have happened. So the ones that are not coming to that I do not have direct control of, but I do have partnership in, those proceeds go to their respective LLC accounts. So that's something else that you need to figure out in your partnerships is what's happening to the cash flow, right? Is it coming to you? Are you splitting it monthly, or are you keeping it in one account to grow, to maintain the property, and to potentially buy more with that same partner? So you're thinking of like what is happening to those proceeds. Brianna just asked my ownership level. So that's a really good question. My mom and my uncle were both really interested in real estate. My uncle is a mortgage broker in California. He rents in California because it's so crazy expensive. He rents a tiny house in California. He can't buy there. And so when I got my license and was just like basically recruiting everyone in my life and being like, who wants to do this? Like how I was so interested and into it for a while that I recruited him and my mom to partner with me here in Austin since it's such a good market. So I have a third partnership in four of these properties. Yeah. And in those properties, we have equal ownership. So it's 33, and 34. Is that right? Yeah. And we make decisions together, and we have our own LLC. And then I have one property, that the one I'm sitting in right now, I also have third, but that's my when I have 2 silent partners. So those other partners, they lent me their W-2 job, and they lent me money, and then I did the rest. In retrospect, I would have given them less percentage. We're equal partners on this deal. I could have given each of those people 10%, but I learned, and one of them is my little sister, and the other is my best friend. So I feel good about bringing them up with me. And then I have another one with Christina, actually, my co-founder, and in San Antonio, one of those, and we have another partner, and we own it in thirds. So it's usually thirds, actually. And then I'm a silent investor in one property on the east side of Austin, and I own 10%, or our company actually, Open House, owns 10% of that, and we don't have a say in what happens. We didn't pledge any time. We don't even have to go to the meetings. We just have 10%, and we get 10% of the proceeds every month when we start creating income, and we get 10% if it sells. So I kind of have a mixture for sure, but I'm very active in most of them except for that one silent partner. Shayla, that's a good question. She asked, do I have a preference in being a silent partner versus having a say? In that, the one that I'm a silent partner, it's actually the church. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, or have heard Rochelle Willett. Actually, she's the one that spearheaded the church. And at the time I was, starting a business and really busy with my life as it is. And wouldn't have made sense for me to pledge any time. So it's really awesome to kind of I've never had much capital. I've always kind of bootstrapped things, and I've been really scrappy with how I've done things. And so it's really cool to be like, you guys do the things and I'm going to give you money. So that's exciting. And that's probably moving forward. Like I'll probably do more of that. While I do love the scrappiness of real estate and how much control I can have, it's been really nice to kind of like, and it's in phases, right? So I had my first phase of real estate and now I'm moving into the phase where I'm a little bit more silent. So that is very exciting. I've been very scrappy otherwise. So anyway, that's mine. I don't want to drone on about my my investments, but sorry, Allegra, hold on. But this is, and I'll answer any questions you have about my partnerships. But we're going to move on to Allegra. So basically, Allegra is going to outline her 3 deals, and I really like it because each one has been a different partnership, and so I'm excited for you guys to hear how she's done this. She's also incredible at asking people to give her money. So here you go, Allegra.
Okay, so yeah, I just realized it's June 2020 and I bought my first house, this one, which is a condo, but it looks like a townhouse. It's an attached unit that's 2 stories, split level, in 78702 on my birthday in 2018. So it was very exciting to be turning 32 and buying my first house, which I'd always hoped that I would be a homeowner before I turned 30, but I was living in New York, so that was not feasible for me. So when I moved here at the end of 2017 with a boyfriend, we moved into a downtown apartment, and suddenly I was like, what are we doing? We need to buy a house. And he was like, well, we have all these goals that you gave us, and we don't really have that much capital to do it. So we did the very uncomfortable, hard task of asking our parents, hey, if there was ever a time when you thought you might give something to us for a wedding or whatever, and meanwhile, we'd only been dating 7 months, so this sounded real crazy to everyone involved. We were like, we would be really open to it. And by the way, you can give a tax-free gift of $15,000. So we recruited, and not everyone turned us down. So we got a little bit of money that way, and we jumped on it. We did not know much when we started, other than we were new-ish boyfriend and girlfriend, and it was more important to us to set a financial foundation than to get married. But in doing so, we knew that we needed to have a really smart legal structure in place. So we have an operating agreement on this property. We did end up going in 50-50 on the down payment and the split of the ownership. We are both on the mortgage, and yeah, so that house is 50-50 ours. My biggest goal in buying that house was to pay less for our mortgage than we were paying in rent. And I knew I was going to have to house hack to do that, which is why we got that split level condo, because we lived upstairs through a front door and tenants lived downstairs through a yard access. And so that was $2,600 mortgage, and someone paid $1,300 of our mortgage without access to a kitchen, which is crazy to me. They were all guys, by the way, the entire time that we lived there. So 2 years before in New York, I'd been paying $2,000 for my rent. Then I got to Austin and we were paying $1,800 for a downtown condo. Then we owned our own condo on the east side on like prime 6th Street, walk to Greater Goods, all the fun places, for $1,300. And that has become kind of my motivator. How can I always pay less and keep moving into houses that I own? So that's that house. Any questions?
Questions? I love that you house hacked that people were paying $1,300, but it is very prime real estate. Can you tell me your regrets, any regret that you have on that property?
My biggest regret on that property is not really understanding what it meant to buy a condo. So once we did that, we got the HOA documents and we realized that our initial plan, which was to Airbnb the downstairs, was actually not feasible. So that was our first big mistake. We could have been making probably our mortgage if we had just been renting that one room, but instead we had to have a long-term tenant, and not actually that long term. It's a minimum of 3 months. So that's lucky. So we really only had like 2 people that lived there, but good to know. We are actually potentially moving back into that house because another mistake that we made was not doing some renovations while we lived there and not seeing whether or not we should refinance before we left there. So we kind of had the bug to get the next property, and we had found a partner, and I'm going to talk about that one in a minute, but we kind of moved on without really surveying the scene and being like, what else can we optimize here before we go? So now we are likely going to have to move back into that house to take advantage of rates, because that's at a 4.625, and we would like it in the 3s.
And you still have PMI, private mortgage insurance, on that?
We actually don't. We used a lender that let us buy our PMI down.
Oh,
so
good.
We paid $4,000 up front to buy down our PMI.
Good.
That was confusing too. The entire mortgage process for our first house was just like a shock to the system of like, whoa, that was another thing. I knew I was starting a company and that I was going to leave a W-2 job. So I knew I needed to do it. And I had kind of the clock was ticking, but going through that experience, I realized like how much it needs help. And so for all the entrepreneurs on this phone call, I am no longer mortgage worthy. And so my other 2 houses, I couldn't even be considered as part of the lending portion of it. So good thing I'm creative and negotiate, because that was where I strived and got in on these deals. Otherwise, I would have had to stop at this house. So like my goal in life, and I'll probably end up doing this with Steph and Christina somehow, and this whole community, is finding a way to get private mortgages to gig economy and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's a great, that's why we said W-2s are so important, and why that could be an asset to a partnership, because you cannot get a mortgage without a W-2 or an extensive background in entrepreneurship. So 2 years at least. Okay, so that is important. Oh, sorry. And then otherwise, what about down payment? Anything about that?
We put 10% down, and we guessed. I mean, we really, really guessed. The only number that I went on for that was how much we could house hack it. And so we could have put more down. And I'm really glad that we did put 10%, because that is our highest mortgage. We just break even on that house pretty much right now. And that's part of the reason we're moving back in, to optimize the mortgage, but also to do some renovations so that we can command more rent. And I lost my thought.
That's good.
We keep only putting 10% down allowed us to get the other houses. So it was one of those things where, because we had parents involved and they did offer to give us some money, they were all like, this comes with strings attached, you have to do 20%, which if anyone has the struggle of people telling them you need to do something this way, and it feels like, well, they've done it, I should listen, it's okay to go against that. Like, I forget who it was, maybe Lisa, who had the parents who said never partner.
Shayla.
Oh, it's Shayla. Okay. So anyways, we had parents that were like, only do it this way. Fortunately, I'm in personal finance, and I knew that was not the only way to do it, but I then had to convince my partner, my boyfriend, who wanted to be a good son and is a little bit more traditional, to go against that, because that is like a very common rule of thumb that shouldn't matter as much as your monthly debt load and your other goals.
Yeah. I also love that you were only dating for 7 months when you bought this. So it was like and we're going to go into that a little bit with Valerie too, is like, it's a financial partnerip at that point,
100%.
like
100%.
You guys are engaged now, so it worked out, but it doesn't have to, because it was a smart financial decision.
Yeah.
Okay. So property number 2.
Okay. Property number 1, I didn't know Steph. Property number 2, I bought with Steph. We purchased this in 2019 with another partner. So interestingly enough, that partner is my fiance's friend. They've been friends for a few years, and he said the magic words of, I really want to get into real estate. I have a lot of capital, but I have no time and I have no interest in doing anything that would like contribute equity to the house. So we were like, okay, well, we have an idea for you. And after 2-3 months of negotiations, we actually started looking at houses. We ended up buying a house in 78725. He purchased it all cash, and then he actually refinanced out of that. And that is our only house that is currently in an LLC. He works as a financial advisor, has a relationship with a bank, and was able to buy it directly into an LLC. That is very atypical, as Steph can tell you. And so that's currently our only house in an LLC, but we plan to roll other houses into LLCs in the future when they're solely rental properties. But like I said, we're going back to an old one to reclaim it as our primary to do stuff. And then we're currently in our third, which is our primary. So they're not in LLCs. The choice we made on that house was to find a house that had a 2-car garage that we could renovate into a B unit, because we were looking at duplexes and they were just gone. And we, even with a cash offer at the time, didn't feel like we were gonna be able to get something that, so this deal, the deal structure was the partner buys it and my boyfriend and I live in, renovate it, which we had never done. So that was a lot of trust from the partner, but we knew like, we can't renovate an entire house. We can renovate one portion that we turn into a studio, add a kitchenette and a bathroom. And even that was very hard. And we learned a lot from all of our mistakes, but we now own that house 50-50 with him. So we manage the renter, the tenants, and we've had it tenanted since February of this year.
So just to reiterate, they put $0 into this deal.
Oh yeah,
zero. Can I just have a moment of silence for Allegra's ability to have people give her money? It is insane. But
we call him White Glove. He really wanted to just like throw money and then come back when it was done. And so we did negotiate. Not only would he buy the house in cash, but he would agree to a $40,000 renovation budget. Anything we went above that, we were responsible for. So obviously we stayed within that budget.
Right. And then after that, he pulled his cash back out. He refinanced back out of that deal. He did keep a little bit of cash in the deal. So he didn't do this deal for free, of course, but he is now getting $800 a month cash flow as well as you guys. So it's a $1,600 a month cash flow that you split. So he basically did no work. It's an amazing deal for both of you.
Yeah. He only had his money gone for like a month because he put it in and then he refinanced it right back out before we'd done the renovation. So the house wasn't like, in an escalated price.
Right. And then
that was the $335,000 house. I don't remember if I said that.
Yes. And that another thing about that house is it was already renovated. So they moved into this beautiful new house that was already renovated, and they did have to live through the renovation, but they didn't have to renovate the whole house. They just added on a unit. They wouldn't have had to live through any renovation had you not had to trench through the living room.
Yes. Yeah. Just so we're all clear, because we were novice renovation enthusiasts and thought this would be no big deal, it ended up being a 15-foot trench that we had to dig across the living room and rip up all the tile, all the concrete, all the flooring. And because the house was built in the 70s, it was on, what are they called? Tension cables. And if you like jackhammer through one, it can fly out from the side of the house and destroy other people's property. So hearing that as a complete noob, we had people coming, we had vendors that we were considering having them like tunnel under the house because we were so afraid of these tension cables, and it ended up being completely fine, other than the fact that we didn't know you had to tap into the sewage, and that was on the other side of the house. We were like, oh, it's right by water, because there's water in the kitchen and the garage is next to the kitchen.
Yeah, slab is hard. But when it's all said and done, cash flowing $800 a month for each of you, each partner is insane. So it's like, this deal was in 2019, not that long ago. You had to go through some struggles as the people who didn't put any cash down. But on the other end of it, you're each cash flowing $800. That is like very good. They're not all three on the refi mortgage. Just the money partner is on the mortgage now.
Correct.
When you refinanced. Yeah.
Correct.
And then
Which is
Shayla's
awesome.
question.
Which is, say that again, Celeste.
How can you buy a house in an LLC without credit on the LLC?
Yeah.
And how do you roll a rental into an LLC? What's a good time to do that?
Yeah. So if you buy with an LLC, you have to use someone's credit. So this guy, he bought with an LLC, but he used his own personal credit. It was basically a one-person LLC that he bought with, and he used his own credit to back it up. And then what I usually do is buy with just a person's name, and then after the fact, roll the property into the LLC after we close.
How long after you close?
It depends. Usually I try to do it as soon as possible. So you can literally do it the day after. The only issue, and this is something that I've never seen come to fruition, but there is a due on sale clause. Has anyone heard of that? A due on sale? That is, if the deed changes from what it says on the loan, they can technically call your mortgage due. So like, you owe me $250,000. However, it's not in the bank's best interest to do that if it is a timely paid mortgage. So it's in their best interest to have you pay the mortgage for the life of the loan, because that's how they're going to make the most money. So if they have you pay it back the next month, they've literally made $0 on that mortgage. So I've done this with 6 properties, and I've never had the sale or the loan due on sale. So there is risk, and there's always risk in.
But just to add to that, you then have the asset that you can sell. So it's not like you have to go and find a brand new $250,000. You can put the house up for sale.
Yes. Oh, exactly. You can always sell. It's fine. Yeah. Yes. And then Annie, LLCs, you can, I've done it so many times, but I always just pull up the WikiHow, and there's a WikiHow on how to set it up an LLC in Texas. So I just follow those steps, because it's first of all, very, very frustrating, because none of the websites are where they need to be in 2020. And second of all, they make it really complicated. So, WikiHow or LegalZoom or Better Legal. Okay. Property 3.
The last thing I'll say about that other house was just that, we actually had 2 contracts. We had a contract while we were renovating. We were basically under a construction agreement that said, if you hit this checklist, and it was like all the 20 things we needed to do in the renovation, then you will earn your equity in this house. Then after that, we got added to his LLC. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's really smart too.
And we are also added to his LLC. It's like his LLC and our LLC, like none of our names. Well, our names are as managing members, but that's it.
Yeah. Okay, so your third property where you're sitting right now.
Okay, so I'm sitting in 78721. We bought this house in December of 2019. This is a 50-50 partnership agreement with my fiance, but only my fiance is on the mortgage, because I was an entrepreneur at this point. And so we actually got this house, which is why I think the mortgage industry is so crazy, with the employment letter for his new job. He had just taken a data science course and just gotten a job. And just with that letter, like before he had a paycheck, they'll let a W-2 buy a house, but they won't let someone who has proven income with a company and less than 2 years of taxes buy a house. Tell me how that's feasible. So this is our primary residence, and like I said, I needed to pay less than $1,300 a month, and so we knew we needed to hack it somehow. Initially, we thought we would. There's a bedroom that is accessible from the front porch, but there's only 1 bathroom, so it's technically a 2-1, but there's an upstairs finished attic. And so we were like, oh, well, we'll make that the second bedroom and we'll just give away like the actual bedroom for Airbnb guests because we can do that now. Problem is the 1 bathroom. So we were like trying to figure out how much it would cost us to like fully add an addition, roof, siding, all of that. And ultimately we were like, you know what? I'm a 33-year-old woman. I don't really want anyone living in the house with me anymore. Let's do an ADU. So Steph and I did Operation Shed, if anyone follows us on Instagram, and we built an ADU in our backyard for short-term rentals. And I wrote down the goal in January to have it finished and rented by June 1st and fully ramped to cover our mortgage by September 1st. COVID hit. We definitely got a little nervous, but I'm a big fan of sticking to your plan and also never doing something without a twist. So even though we plan on utilizing Airbnb for that strategy, instead of just building a bedroom in the back, we decided to put a kitchenette. So it has like an actual stove, an actual sink, plus the bathroom. And then because of this situation, we're like, okay, well, maybe we'll just long-term rent it for half of our mortgage. The mortgage on this property, it's a 3.25 mortgage and it's $2,180 a month. And so we were like, okay, well, we'll just rent it for $1,150. And we almost did that. And at the last minute, we went with our gut and we did Airbnb. The first night it rented was like May 31st, and it's rented in entirety pretty much through June, and we'll be making $1,500 this month. So we'll be paying $680 for our mortgage.
Yes, and that's including management, so it's truly passive.
Yeah, that's
so cool.
Is management. We haven't touched it.
I love it. Okay, so Brianna, if buying a house of only one partner's name and or one person on the mortgage, can the lender take other partners' contribution to down payment?
I paid the entire down payment.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to be on the mortgage.
Yeah. So you can take a gift, and it's kind of interesting. It varies from lender to lender, but you have to prove that you're related in some way. So not related, but like that you were basically engaged at that point. And so you had to anecdotally prove that we're living together and that we're together. Like you can't just take a random person's cash. But
so how would that work then for partners? Because we actually weren't engaged at that time, and I don't remember what we did. Like I don't remember them asking us anything.
Well, in that case, they might be a little bit more lax on it. Did you have to write a gift letter?
I cannot remember. I really don't think I did. I must have written a gift letter, but I don't think I said anything like, this is my boyfriend, we've lived together. It was just like
that's awesome if that's true, because that's and mom works too, grandma works. Like if it's not hard. And then if you are partnering with someone, you just have to let the money what is it called? I always forget this. Valerie, do you know what I'm talking about?
Marinate.
Let the money not marinate. Cure? No, I don't know. It has to sit in the account for more than 2 months. So if you're marinate in the account, okay.
That's a technical finance term.
Yeah. So it has to be in there for season the money. It's basically marinate.
Yeah, sounds the same. Sounds like it.
And something else to think about too, if it's just a matter of like you want to split with a partner and they actually have enough cash like in their account, they can pay for it, and then you can and then you can give them your portion of it, right?
Yes.
So it's a matter of, is it just because you want to be 50-50, or do they actually have the money that they can put up front and then you can pay them in the back?
Yeah, that's a great point. If they it can be one person's money according to the transaction, and at the end, after you close, they're not monitoring your accounts after you close. So good questions. And yeah, I've partnered with my mom, I've partnered with my grandma. All of that works pretty well. And usually you have to write a letter to the lender. Okay, so lessons learned, Allegra. We touched on some of these, so you don't have to like go back into them if you already touched on them.
Yeah, just that when you're working with partners, if you know them already, you can move a lot faster. My boyfriend, I'm like, we're buying it. And he's like, okay. But working with his friend was a much slower process. And we went back and forth a lot of time just on the legal framework. And so we lost I've only lost one house in Austin, which I'm really proud of. But I think about that house still because we were not prepared. And probably because I wouldn't have had a trench across my living room, and everything I own today still has dust permeating its surfaces, crevices. What else did I learn? Oh, I learned that I really like deal sourcing and being strategic and negotiating. Like, that's my business brain. What I don't want to do is manage tenants. So we got real clear on the roles and systems. And so my fiance handles that portion. And then houses cost money. Like, yeah, they're cool and they're fun, but they are a big leech. So the first weekend of summer, 2 out of our 2 rentals, air AC bust. And like, that's fair penny. So just know it's not always sunshine. Yeah. And then, yeah, just building or renovating, not only if you haven't done it, like it's a whirlwind, but it takes the longest at the end. It's like the freaking little, it's like, it looks like a garage one day and then it looks like an apartment the next, or in our current ADU case, it was like our yard and then it had a structure on it. And that seems to happen really quickly. But at the end, it is like tedious little stuff. And if you're trying to save on money and you're dealing like countless runs to Home Depot. And then finally, oh yeah, just consider all angles before leaving a primary. Even going back to our former primary, because of the reasons I told you, I'm looking around this house, like what else can we do? So we want to get it appraised before we leave. So this house, which we only put 5% down on, we can pull the PMI off, and just like anything else we can think of before we leave, and we roll it into an LLC and never look back.
Yeah. And renovations, any renovations that you want to do. Because it's hard.
To this house?
Yeah. I mean, just like we talked about a little, it's hard. It sucks to have to pull tenants out and then have it be vacant for however many months while you're doing that. I know it also sucks to live in a renovation, but you're not losing that. You're not bleeding the monthly if you're living somewhere else, if you do it while you're there.
Yeah, totally.
Hey, okay, well, thank you, Allegra. Jump in if you have anything else to say, but we're going to move on to, no, we've got wins, of course. That's the most important, wins.
Okay, so our first condo, which was $416,500, and our biggest mortgage is like $2,850. That one just pays for itself. Yes, we make $3,000 from the tenants, but the HOA and the loan, like it's literally, it's just breaking even.
Which is, I would just like to say, breaking even is still, like, I'm glad that you put it on the wins. It's still an investment. It is, you have someone else paying all of your expenses. That's amazing. And then you're accruing equity and you're paying your mortgage down.
Yeah, we also, that, if you guys know where the 7th Street HEB is, if you happen to be located in Austin, that grocery store was not renovated. It's fully renovated. Our block had a lot of seedy stuff going on. It's fully transformed. So we know that the value of that house has gone up significantly and will continue to do so. So we're very happy that we could, that's our most expensive house. And like, we probably won't pay that again, but we'll keep it. And then our second house, which was our first partner deal, we cash flow $800 on that. We leave it in the house account. And our plan is to reevaluate it in December and leave a certain amount of capital in there just for whatever could happen, because we've already had a few issues. But other than that, we would like to take some money and put that into our IRAs for this year. So we consider that the IRA house. And then, yeah, just jumping in before you know everything exactly, I'm a huge fan of, because you build the confidence from just doing it and figuring it out. And I heard all of you introduce yourself. You're all talented and have so much to bring to the table. So it's like any other job, you learn on the job. And this is a lie. It wasn't 3 years ago. It was 2 years ago. I had done none of this. And now I have 3.5 properties. The half is for the ADU.
That's amazing. It's so inspiring. 2 years ago, I wrote 3 years. I'm sorry.
No, I thought it was 3 years.
It's very cool. It's cool to see a ramp up that quick. And we just went to go see another house the other day.
Got the bug.
So Okay, so Allegra, again, jump in. Thank you so much. It's so valuable, and it's a really interesting take on a partnership too. Okay, Valerie, are you ready?
I am ready. So the first property that I bought by myself. I had a lot of, preconceived notions about, you only buy property like once you're in a relationship or like once you're an adult. And I never kind of felt those things. But it got to a point where I realized I was going to stay in Austin. And I decided that I was going to invest in, I was going to buy a property for myself to live in. So I bought this one solo. It was also a birthday present to myself. And because I was, I very much like wanted to do things by the book, 20% down, no question. I wasn't comfortable, taking on, like, I never really considered, house hacking or any of those other things. So I was very aware of kind of what that payment would be and wanted to be very conservative in the amount of money that I spent. So I was so conservative that I was actually able to do a 15-year mortgage along with a 20% down.
That's so badass.
And it's, so the property I have is in 78704. If you guys know where the picnic trailer is off of South Lamar, it's right there, but it's a small condo in a condo complex called the Flamingo. And the square footage is 525 square feet. And you're probably thinking, wow, that is really small. However, the layout is really clutch. It's a really good use of space. So, like square footage does not always weigh into like the functionality and livability of a space.
Is it a one bedroom?
Yeah, it's a 1-1.
Okay.
So I lived there for about 2 years. And as soon as I bought the property, I was like, all right, how do I get onto the HOA board? Because, when you live in a condo, you have to pay an HOA and there's potential for special assessments. So, I felt like it was important to be really educated about the property and to be able to have a say. And anyways, so I ended up becoming the president of the HOA, and I'm still the president of the HOA, even though I haven't lived there for about 3 years now. So, but still, like, I know what's going on, and, and even, we've had conversations about potentially opening up our property to allow for Airbnb. So you have a lot of sway when you're on the board, and you can make changes if you want to make changes to the rules.
Yeah.
So I lived there for about 2 years, and I currently have a long-term renter, and I'm breaking even. But over the course of, buying the property, I've probably made, like maybe about 130K, like in equity, which is kind of crazy, for like not really doing anything.
Yeah.
And I really lucked out.
Did you make any repairs?
No.
No, like renovations or anything.
No, just painted it between like me moving out and and the renter moving in. So very, very cosmetic things. But like knock on wood.
Yeah, I know.
Things have been good. But yeah, and I've also lucked out. I've had a long-term renter in there. She's on her 3rd year. So like the turnaround cost, I'm saving on that, but I'm obviously not able to increase the rent as much as kind of what the market value is. But.
So 2 things amazing about this. You're covering your expenses with a 15-year mortgage, which is so amazing. So in 10 years, you will have this paid off, and everything will be cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
That is so cool. I love it. And then President Valerie, or I guess we could President Figlin.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I didn't realize you were president. I know that you advised that people join the HOA, which is also, even if you're not president, like being on the HOA is just so wise when they do have control of a section of your payment. So have you had to deal with any special assessments?
Yeah, we did need to do a special assessment. but you know, it's actually a lot of work being on like on the HOA. When I first came on the board, I'm sure you guys have heard horror stories of like HOA, like where people are like struggling for power, and like, you know, this is like their outlet where, you know, they have a voice, so, you know, they go overboard. So that was definitely the case, and that was also another reason why I wanted to be on the board, because I'm like, this is crazy. Like, there's no reason for, you know, like a 20 unit, you know, condo complex have so much drama. So yeah, so once I've been on the board, like we made a lot of changes. Like we switched out, like we've changed property management companies several times. We've gotten better vendors. Like we were very thoughtful about like understanding why like we needed to do a special assessment, and then finding like the right vendor, not necessarily going for the cheapest, but for the one that we thought was going to do the best work. And so yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so let's go to your second property. This is your partnership property.
Yes. So this is my partnership property. And yeah, you know, I kind of, so at this point, my boyfriend moved into my 525 square foot condo with me. We also happened to foster 3 kittens. So it was definitely a full house. But for some reason, I just felt very like pulled to invest in the real estate market, because I think I felt really good about the initial, you know, purchase that I had made, and thought, you know, and was kind of like feeling
confident.
Yeah, feeling more confident, you know, saw that it wasn't like as this crazy big deal as I had, you know, kind of like made up in my head. So yeah, I was like, all right, let's do this. And I had, oh yes, and right before this, I had left like my corporate consulting gig to do to try my hand at entrepreneurship, and then, you know, that was, anyways, that's a story for itself. But as soon as I got, I went back into tech and you know, got a W-2, I was like, okay, I think this is the time. Like, I think we should do this. And I knew that at that time, because I had taken, you know, I had done the entrepreneurship for about a year. So like my funds were maybe not as high as I would have liked. I knew that I couldn't do a deal by myself. So this is when I recruited my partner, and he was very much like on the fence about it. But I think because I was like, I really had to work him. Like I really had to convince him that this is something that I thought would be a really good idea for both of us.
Yeah.
And this time, like I had gotten more information. So, you know, I had more conversations. I realized you don't have to do 20% down. Like we only did 5% down, or, you know, that was the plan for this house. So yeah, so we also wanted to, like, we were open to do a renovation as well. And for us, like location was super, super important, but we had all of these conversations like ahead of time, like, before, you know, even like before we started to look at property, like we kind of, like we had the agreement that this is not like necessarily like our forever home together where we were going to build a family. Like this was going to be an investment property, that ideally would, you know, help us, you know, both, build wealth.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so we had a very, you know, like we had a very different approach. We learned about renovations, and we learned about a home style mortgage where the renovation costs were rolled into the mortgage. So that was like a whole process. Like we worked with a general contractor, and he literally had to like sign his name like on the mortgage in order for us to close.
Yeah, they don't like to do that.
Yeah, they don't. And he knew that there was only like X amount of money that was going to be added for the renovations that, you know, like we had signed off on. So yeah, so definitely investment first mindset. And then because, you know, now we were thinking strategically, we realized that, that my partner would be able to, you know, qualify to to do the loan on his own. So that way I would still have the primary residence of the condo. I'd be able to use my homestead exemption there. And then in the future, right, because I'm thinking steps ahead, I could get a primary residence on my own. So
do you still have your homestead on your condo?
I do, yeah.
So smart.
So, yeah, let's see what else. So going through the renovation process, like, took a really long time, but I saw the huge benefit of having a partner during a renovation because, you know, we were both working full time. So there was times when, like, we needed to figure something out really quickly. And, like, you know, we were like at an offsite or at a really important meeting, and like we just couldn't like have access to the phone or to talk to the contractor. So there was like one day when I was at this all day offsite, and like, you know, afterwards I called him and we were chatting, and he's like, oh, by the way, he's like, here's all the shit that went down this day, and he's like, and it's fixed, and I took care of it. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, so the benefit of having a partner, you know, is the responsibility is not all on you.
Yeah.
You
can have a team working for you, but it's not the same as having someone else as invested as you.
Yeah. And also, like, you have to make so many decisions. You go into a house and you're like, this looks great. But when you actually break it down, there's like 1,000,001 decisions and things that need to, like the door handle, the grout color. It's craziness. So again, having someone that you can kind of bounce ideas off of, the responsibility is not all on you, was a huge benefit of having a partnership. And we were able to remove our PMI after about 1.5 years because of the forced appreciation from the renovation and also from the market. And because the house is in a great location, we Airbnb'd it. I've been living here in this house. So my partner and I are no longer together, but like we're still on super great terms, and we're still partners in this house. It's 50-50. And I've been living in this house for 1 year, and I was able to cover 75% of my house costs through.
So cool. When I met you and your partner or your ex-boyfriend, I was like so intrigued, but I felt like I couldn't ask you about it because you were like, we bought this house together and we're exes and we're here together at your thing. And I was like, what is this? I was so impressed and intrigued. So it's just very cool. You definitely, like, you're proof that you bought this with an investment mindset and that's it.
Yeah.
So that is so cool. And you live there by yourself currently.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On the east side, and like she can walk to East 6th. It's very cool.
Yeah, to Whistler's.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have questions about this one? This is a really, I mean, I think it's just so fascinating that it was a romantic partnership, but approached as a true investment. Like, this isn't their forever home. Valerie's going to buy another house with her own buying power, but so she was like so smart to not tie up. So that's one thing that you demonstrated is like, if you don't both have to be on the loan, analyze it. Should you both be on it? You're tying both of your, if Valerie and her partner were both on it, they're both individually responsible for the whole amount of the mortgage. So
I have a quick question, and Valerie, feel free if you don't want to answer. Did y'all discuss this beforehand in your operating agreement of like, what if we break up, or what if like?
So we discussed all of these scenarios ahead of time, and like we had a game plan. We knew that there was these options. Like, we could always long-term rent, we could, full-time Airbnb. Like we discussed all of these things. So even when we decided that we were no longer going to be living together, like we already had a game plan. Like, this wasn't like, this house wasn't the thing that was like keeping us together because we were afraid of like not being able to pay the mortgage, because that's also not a good situation. So,
right.
So definitely discussing all of this ahead of time is
Does he have, that's a good question. Shayla, she asked, is this considered a partner exit? Do you feel, has he exited this business partnership?
No, we still have 50-50 ownership of this property.
Okay. So Shayla, a partner exit would be like if I no longer wanted to be a part of any of my partnerships and I wanted an exit. So And that's in our operating agreement, saying like, okay, if someone wants out, let's say for the first 5 years, like, sorry, you can't get out. But after 5 years, the LLC can buy you out. You can, you can sell. That would be an exit. Like, okay, if one person wants to exit, then we all have to sell and take our thirds of the profit. So in this case though, is your partner getting any proceeds monthly?
No. So we're kind of treating this like our option would have been to long-term rent, right? So instead of that, like I'm covering the mortgage. However I choose, right? I could get a roommate, I could Airbnb,
right?
Could pay it, on my own. But so I am responsible for the mortgage while I'm living here.
Yeah. Only you. He doesn't pay any part of the mortgage.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. However, if there are, if like, let's say like the roof collapses, like then we would be responsible for major repairs 50-50.
Right. That's a great thing to bring up is capital. They're called capital expenditures. And that's a big thing that happens in your house. It's not maintenance. It's a big replacement. So roof, HVAC, anything like that is foundation is capital expenditure. And usually that's drawn into an operating agreement saying if there is a big draw, if there needs to be a capital expenditure happen, then the partners split it. And we have the same thing. It's like if something big happens, we have to make contributions to the LLC, but monthly maintenance should be covered by the LLC account. So that's a great point. And then in addition, like this is still a really good deal for him. Like it's not like you're walking away with it, but he's 50% invested in something that is completely covering itself. So, yeah. Do you have a plan to exit? Do you have a plan to sell?
We don't have a concrete plan. I think right now it makes sense and right now, like I really enjoy living here. So I definitely don't want to let go of this property. And I think that there's a lot of potential to do a lot of different things with it. So I think it makes sense to hold on just because of the location.
Oh, totally. And he's got an amazing tenant who's also taking care of the maintenance. So again, very good deal for both of you. And you can be creative with your income with this property. And with the property that I'm living in right now, it's similar. My partners have 30% and 30% equity or 30% ownership. However, I'm responsible for everything. So they don't get anything monthly. I'm creatively creating income from Airbnb, and I cash flow this property as my primary, and I keep that in my pocket. So all different ways to structure partnerships. Okay, what are the biggest things that you've learned?
So I come, from an immigrant family. So like the fact that I was buying a house with a boyfriend was like just bananas to them. So there was a lot of conversations that I needed to have. And I wasn't asking for their money. Like it was just for them to like understand like what I was doing and like they just didn't get it because they're so focused on, they're so risk averse. So definitely like just because other people may not have the same risk tolerance as you doesn't mean that you shouldn't go for it, because now they understand, like now they're like, oh yeah, that was a really good call. But yeah, they had to kind of see it to believe it because that wasn't something that was normal to them.
Such a good point.
And definitely discuss like all future case scenarios, have an operating agreement. That is highly, highly encouraged. Think long-term strategy, like how can you kind of optimize the system, to favor you and align with the goals that you personally have, right? If you want to buy another property, then maybe it doesn't make sense for both of you guys to be on the mortgage. So being really clear about like what's really important when you're choosing a property, and also finding a property that will give you a lot of different options. Like as what's going on now, like obviously, like if you were purely doing short-term rental, like that, you would have probably been out, several months of income, or it wouldn't have been as expected. So just being really like thoughtful and creative about how the property can be used. I would say some of like the really big things that I personally consider is location, like the layout and the bones of a property, like big expenditures like foundation, AC, roof, because those are all very expensive. So you kind of want to understand like what you need to plan for. And then also like seeing if all the permits are closed and if there's already an existing certificate of occupancy, because that'll give you flexibility in being able to short-term rent and, being like cool with the city about it.
Yes. That's a great thing to mention. The certificate of occupancy, if you already have that, it's so easy to get a short-term rental license. If you don't already have that, it is very, very hard to get a short-term rental license. So great thing to mention.
Yeah. And then renovation is a huge, huge learning curve, but like once you do it, you're kind of like, okay, like I already know, like I already have like the shortcut, to it. Not that it's easy, but it becomes a lot clearer once you do it. And then if your property has an HOA, get on that board.
Presidente. Okay. What about your wins?
Yeah. So last year, my short-term rental covered 75% of my primary residence costs, and like I was only Airbnb-ing like on the weekends. So it wasn't every weekend, so it was a pretty good deal for me. Yeah. The condo pays for itself, which is great. Very low touch point, and overall like my risk tolerance has increased, and I would say not just in real estate, but I think in overall investment, and you see it kind of transferred to other areas of your life. So I think that's been a huge win for me. That's
such a good point, and something that I think about all the time. I talk with Allegra all the time about risk tolerance, and I mean obviously us, me, you, Valerie, and Allegra are all in. I mean, Valerie, you're not in that in your work, but like in your personal life, you're so invested. And so that increasing that is such an important part of investment life. I think I have such a high risk tolerance, and I don't know why. So we're trying to like dig into that more. But I think overall, women have a lower risk tolerance. And so through real estate, I think it's a great way to increase it because it's very risky and high rewards.
And just because you're risk tolerant, I mean, doesn't mean that you're like making crazy non-thoughtful decisions. Like you create like a method to be able to assess risk, but also like your risk tolerance, you're willing to risk a little bit more, but that the reward is higher.
Yes, it's not like you're out there buying crazy properties that have no foundation. It's like you're able to jump when you see a good deal. And that's like to Allegra's point too, having a partner that is also able to jump with you, because you can get pulled down. And to your point, Valerie, not everyone has the same risk tolerance, and it takes people a lot longer to make those decisions. So like finding someone who matches your risk tolerance too, or finding someone who can help you to grow yours, or vice versa. So questions? Anyone have questions for either of these two lovely investors?
No. Y'all want to type them, or we can unmute you and ask?
Yeah, either way. You can type in, and type if you have one that you want to ask in person too. Do you guys feel more confident in going into a partnership? I know that, good. So sorry, go ahead, Celeste.
I was just going to say, we do have a Facebook group. I'll put the link in the chat right now. If you're not already a part of it, please join it so we can kind of continue this conversation. Like we said, this group is all women investment-minded investors. So we think it's a great source to start if you're just looking for the right partner.
Yeah. Shayla asked, is there an operating agreement I lost it. Operating agreement checklist for things to cover, or does a lawyer ask you all the questions you need when drawing one up? So if you do, so I've done this a couple ways. I've used Rocket Lawyer, which now I'm about to start using Better Legal because it's local and it's a small business. But I've like used the bones of a operating agreement from Rocket Lawyer and then just added clauses as needed. And then when I've used a lawyer, it was really easy, and she did ask all the questions that and it was kind of nice using a lawyer because that is an unbiased party. And then it kind of sparks conversation within your LLC of like, oh, maybe we didn't consider that. So it wasn't expensive to use a lawyer. I think, Allegra, you've used a lawyer. How much did you end up spending?
Like a few $100s.
Yeah, it's
really so worth it. But it is something you can do on your own. Like our first one, we just got an operating agreement online. We filled out all the clauses and we both signed it. Like it's probably something we should make more official now that we actually have a lawyer. At the time, we didn't have a lawyer and we just wanted to move quickly. And I also saw Brianna's question about if you have to form the LLC before or after. And I think that's up to you, but you should definitely form the agreement. So like we had an operating agreement, my partner and I, before we actually created an LLC for the house with the other partner. So like we just literally were like, we don't want to form an LLC. We just want to put an operating agreement, pen to paper that says what happens if we break up, I die, all those things.
Yeah. That sounds, so Annie says, so she got quoted $1,000 for just you as the owner. That's crazy. We do have a good lawyer. So I don't know if you have Lori Davies. She was the one that did ours and it was super good. And then Allegra, did you just use Better Legal?
I did use Better Legal. And I actually have a referral fee. So if people want access to creating their own LLC, I believe it's $100 off. Let me go find it.
Yeah, and especially if it's just you, Annie, that seems pretty high. But you also don't have to have an operating agreement, I don't think, with just a single person LLC. Annie, were you?
Yeah. There's like a basic one, I think, but it's,
I can just unmute myself.
Yes.
Yeah, I just so I have I have an LLC actually. So I've been told I can just copy what I currently have. Like I have an LLC, but I used it to invest in a condo project a few years ago, and I don't want to use it again because I heard for like 10 years there's liability tied to that, and I wasn't very involved in that deal, so I don't want to.
Yeah, tied up. Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to set up new LLCs for my or at least my 2 rentals.
Yeah.
But I've been dragging my feet. I've owned them for for way too long to have them under my personal name. But I've been dragging my feet because everyone says it's so easy and I just haven't gotten around to it. But I did get on LegalZoom today.
Good. I would go onto WikiHow and just see it. And I know it's Secretary of State. You have to reserve a name first and, all of that. It is very annoying. But I don't remember for my own LLC having to upload an operating agreement. So.
Okay.
So I would, and it definitely is different state by state because it's, like you have to do Secretary of State of Texas and you have to register with Texas. But yeah, I would check into it before you spend $1,000 on legal fees.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I heard it's way cheaper if I do it myself. But have you heard also, I heard you have to set up your own, like for it to hold up in court, you'd have to have your own bank statement, like a bank account set up for the LLC. And
yeah. So I would say if you're creating LLC for your rental property, I would create a bank account with that LLC name, and then in that case, you would have to have an operating agreement, I believe, if you're opening a bank account, and then you have to shuffle everything through that. So rent, and I would also pay the mortgage out of that LLC.
And last question, how are y'all getting your rent right now? So in my one rental property, I actually have a management company because the house is really old and it's college kids, and I don't know, I just decided not to deal with it. But my new one is hopefully going to be low maintenance. So I'm going to manage it myself, but they're just paying me through Venmo. And it's just not very ideal for
So right now I use Avail, which is like a software or just like a website. And my tenants pay me through Avail, and then Avail deposits it into my account. But I've had people use Venmo too. You can still use Venmo as an official way as long as you're then depositing it into the LLC.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. And cozy.co also. Cozy, and then Avail is free unless you want to edit the lease. I like to edit my leases so that it's like, I don't like to take care of the lawn. They have to take care of the lawn, stuff like that. So it's $5 a month to use Avail for one property. I think it goes up for each property after that.
Okay. Is it EAIL? Is that what you're saying?
EAVAIL, yep, .co.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
We use both. We use Cozy for one and Avail for the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, yeah, link multiple accounts. That's good. I didn't realize that they could take their money back in Venmo. So yeah, I would just say, especially for LLC. And then one more thing for those of you who have rentals in Texas, I don't know if you guys are doing this, but legally you have to keep the deposits in a separate account. So the deposits stay in like, it's their own account, and they just are never touched. So if you ever have to go through eviction proceedings or anything like that, they'll check to make sure that you have that deposit account, and you're not supposed to touch it. So let's see, any other question?
Allegra is better than just in Austin, or is it?
No, they're nationwide. They can form an LLC in any state.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, yay. Well, it's 8, what is it?
37.
37. Oh my gosh, we're over. Thank you guys so much. We are in that Facebook group pretty heavily, and we want it to be more engaged. So let's start conversations in there. I love this. We can keep the partnership conversation going. And I think Carly said, post what you could bring to a partnership on the Facebook account or on the Facebook group. It would be really, really cool to see more partnerships formed from this group. I know Valerie's like in talks with someone from this group too. And so let's keep that. And I love what Stacy said about a new market in Arizona. If you know people in other states who are interested in real estate, please let them know that they should come to this. It would be really cool to have the perspective of different markets, because Austin is the best city in the world. There's other places in the States that are really fun to invest in. So anything else to add, Allegra, Valerie?
I would just say that I have not made any partners with women yet, and I am planning on doing that stat. So
Yes.
Hit me up, y'all. I want to see, and even if it's not with me, I want to see more women finding and partnering together, because I think it's such a great way to pool our resources and build towards financial freedom. Because like what Valerie did with a 15-year mortgage, like, can you imagine having $3,000 just rolling in 15 years?
Yeah, that's so cool.
You don't have to wait for, Social Security age to build your own income stream. So this is a great way to do it and have other people pay that mortgage. So it is scary, but it's worth it.
Yes. Valerie, last words?
+1 to what Allegra said. Yeah, definitely consider partnership as a way to kind of mitigate the risk, but also still, build your wealth, right? Like we said in the beginning, 10% of something is better than 0% of something. So take the first steps to, figure out what you're comfortable with, and then go for it.
Yay. Thank you guys so much for coming. I'll talk to you on the internet.
Yes. Thank y'all so much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Have a good night.
everybody.
Bye.